Good morning. Unfortunately, I'm not able to be present with you today and not able to listen to your amazing presentations, but I'm ready and going to share with you mine. Today, I'm going to talk about the metaphors in COVID-19 times, and the presentation will be based mainly on the Prime Minister Boris Johnson's statement on coronavirus, and the speech was delivered on the 10th of May 2020. At first, I would like to discuss why is the COVID-19 pandemic talked about metaphorically. As we know, target domain, they tend to correspond to relatively complex, abstract, subjective experiences. And illnesses, including both physical and mental health illnesses, are often described through metaphors because they are exactly the subjective and sensitive experiences, but also they could be really threatening and not easy to deal with. And COVID is a perfect example because it has been described and talked about metaphorically all over the world in different cultures due to some certain reasons. And the reasons were, first, this is something absolutely new, novel, unknown, invisible, highly contagious, very complex, both in the ways of dealing with this, but also to comprehend, controversial, because as we know, there are still people who just don't believe in it, and also very large scaled. And it has been described in different ways, but here are the most common conceptual metaphors that are used for COVID-19 pandemics. And if, as we can see, for the target domain of virus or pandemic or difficulties or even healthcare work, then healthcare workers, they use different source domains. The mains are virus is an enemy, an invader, a threat, or virus is a natural disaster, catastrophe. Often it was tsunami or fire. Then pandemic is war, battlefield. Then difficulties are opponents. Pandemic is a journey, and therefore in this, like if you talk about the systematic usage, healthcare workers were the heroes, the firefighters. If you talk like the virus is an enemy, then they were fighters or soldiers in the war, or dealing with the enemy, this threat. Now let's start with the speech of Prime Minister Boris Johnson's his statement on coronavirus. The logic of the presentation is that I start like how he starts, and he starts, so it doesn't mean that these are the most important or the most widely used metaphors, but he starts with acknowledgement that, and I put it as lockdown limitations, and that people of the country began to put up with restrictions on their freedom, your freedom, or put up with all the hardships or of the program of social distancing, or thanks to your effort and sacrifice. So you sacrificed in stopping the spread of the disease. Then he moves on, and he does use the virus as an enemy threat, as war, though this this conceptual metaphor was quite criticized because even if it was used by many country leaders around the world, it was highly criticized later on, because the studies that are like framing the effect of war metaphors, they identified that there could be potentially like strong and but also like weak sides in usage of these metaphors, because if though yes, if you talk of something as a war, it brings to people the understanding of emergency and this danger, and they modify their behavior accordingly. But at the same time, it could like justify the measures that are being taken, and they, for example, so we can justify these big restrictions that have been taken, and even in some countries where the military was involved. Also, they could be like counterproductive, because if it is war, you are supposed to fight, but most of the people were supposed to stay in their homes. I don't know if Boris Johnson knew this at that time, but he really doesn't use this metaphor often. So but he still does it as a virus, as an enemy, as a threat. And here we can see some examples from the text, from the statement. To defeat the coronavirus, the most vicious threat, this invisible killer, we must have a world-beaten system for testing potential victims, because if there is an enemy, there are victims of war. We must stay alert. The campaign against the virus at colossal cost to our way of life, to beat the virus, and then to defeat this together. Therefore, if if virus is an enemy and a pandemic is a war, then the people of the country, they are fighters. And he uses it to acknowledge again this those people who face this threat. And like here are the examples: the fortitude of the elderly, the incredible bravery and hard work of our national healthcare system staff, the devotion and self-sacrifice. These are the words that are being used to describe the fighters in the context where the pandemic is a war. A virus is a threat or enemy. But what is very interesting is the fact that Boris Johnson is using a lot of journey metaphors, and they are extensively used in all his statement. And here are some of the examples. To beat the virus and provide the first sketch of a roadmap for reopening society, or a sense of the way ahead, or we take the decisions to proceed. We cannot move forward. To chart our progress and to avoid going back to square one. We are now in a position to begin a move. Then fast progress, but then taking first careful steps. And then he says first step, step 2. Then he this contextual metaphor is being developed even further in his speech. And here we can see that we will be monitoring our progress, And if needed, if there are problems, we will not hesitate to put on the brakes. Then we have been through the initial peak, but it is coming down the mountain that is often more dangerous. We have a route, we have a plan, we will simply wait and go on. We will come back from this devilish illness, we will come back to health. And this is, in fact, the end of his speech, more or less. And therefore, the following conclusions has been done, that the metaphorical means in this statement, they are used in political domain, not in medical domain, and they are used in order to simplify complex and disputable issues. They highlight the need to continue measures to restrict the spread of the disease and also the bravery of the people. And they hide the costs and hardship related to the restrictions that are to follow. I would like to thank you for listening, and I'm stopping sharing my screen and wishing you a productive seminar or the end of the day. Thank you very much.